The night had been quiet until the phone rang. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and Victoria Martinez sat alone in her office, a wall of glass overlooking the city skyline. Papers were spread across her desk. Quarterly reports, profit summaries, rental projections. She was deep into the numbers when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Then something made her swipe to answer. Hello? Is this Victoria Martinez? The woman's voice on the other end was frantic, trembling. Yes, speaking. This is Sandra Walsh from Platinum Events. I'm your sister Isabella's wedding planner. We have a serious situation. Victoria leaned back in her chair, eyes drifting to the dark skyline. What kind of situation? The venue payment. It's due tomorrow. $80,000. Isabella's parents promised to handle it, but their check bounced. Without the payment, the wedding gets canceled. 300 guests. Everything's ready for this Saturday. Victoria stayed silent, listening. Sandra continued, desperate. Isabella gave me your number. She said you might be able to help with a loan. The wedding is at the Grandview Estate. Everything's already set up. The flowers, the catering, the Grandview Estate? Victoria repeated slowly. Yes, Sandra said, confused. It's this beautiful mansion overlooking the harbor. Isabella fell in love with it the moment she saw it. Please, is there any way you could help? She's been dreaming of this day since she was a little girl. Victoria almost laughed. The Grandview Estate. The property Sandra was describing wasn't just familiar, it was hers. The crown jewel of her real estate portfolio. She had purchased it 18 months ago through one of her holding companies. The same property her family had dismissed as too expensive when Isabella begged for it. I'll think about it, Victoria said finally. I'll call you back tomorrow. Please, Miss Martinez, time is running out. After hanging up, Victoria sat still for a long moment. The irony was sharp. 18 months ago, Isabella had been overjoyed when she got engaged to David. She'd shown everyone pictures of the Grandview Estate, the chandeliers, the marble staircases, the gardens made for wedding photos. She'd begged their parents to consider it. Their father's reaction had been explosive. $80,000 for one day? Are you insane? He'd yelled. We're not wasting money on fantasy nonsense. Find something reasonable, Isabella had cried that night. Their mother had tried to soothe her, but their father wouldn't budge. He said dreams were fine until they started costing money. Victoria remembered watching it all quietly. She had already learned that in her family, money was the boundary that decided who was respected and who wasn't. That night, when Isabella cried over a venue she'd never have, Victoria made a decision that would change everything, not just about the wedding, but about herself, because no one in her family knew who she really was. To them, she was still Victoria who works with computers, the sister who never got married, the one living in a small apartment downtown, the one who drove an old Honda and claimed she was always just getting by. They didn't know that Martinez Holdings controlled more than 40 properties across 3 states. They didn't know her tiny apartment was actually a penthouse she owned outright. They didn't know she'd built a tech startup at 25, sold it for $37 million at 28, and turned that money into a real estate empire worth more than $200 million. They had no idea that while they complained about bills, she quietly became one of the most successful investors in the city, and they definitely didn't know that when Isabella's dream of the Grandview Estate fell apart, Victoria had bought it herself in silence. Her phone buzzed again. This time, the caller ID showed Mom. Victoria, honey, her mother said quickly. Did the wedding planner call you? Yes. Thank God. Look, I know we've never asked for anything like this before, but this is Isabella's wedding. Your father and I thought we had it covered, but David's family backed out last minute. And with your father's business struggling and everything costing so much, how much do you need? $80,000, her mother said softly. I know it's a lot. We'll pay you back. We just need a few months. Victoria stayed quiet. She knew there were no investments to liquidate. Her father's landscaping business was barely surviving. Her mother's boutique was losing money. But she didn't say that. I see, she said simply. Please, Victoria. Isabella is devastated. She's been crying all day. This is her dream wedding. Let me sleep on it, Victoria said. Victoria, please. I said I'll call you tomorrow. She hung up, poured herself a glass of wine, and walked to her terrace. The city stretched out below her, glittering in the night. Far in the distance, she could see the faint lights of the Grandview estate, her estate. For years, her family had treated her like the unsuccessful one. Isabella was the golden child, a social media influencer about to marry her college sweetheart. Her brother Miguel was the pride of the family, a lawyer with his own firm. And Victoria? She was the quiet one who never talked about her life. The one who skipped family vacations. The one who was always too busy to visit. Her father's favorite question at family dinners was, "When are you going to get a real career, Victoria?" He'd laugh while saying it, but the sting was always there. Her mother would ask when she was going to settle down and start a real life. They never saw the truth. After selling her startup, Victoria had watched other families implode over money. Cousins who stopped speaking. Siblings who fought over loans. Parents who treated success like a resource to exploit. She had decided she wouldn't let that happen to her, so she kept her success hidden. She drove a modest car. She dressed simply. She played the part of the struggling middle child. And while they pitied her, she built an empire. But now, with her sister's wedding in danger and her parents begging for help, the disguise was losing its use. She walked back inside, set her wineglass down and stared at the skyline again. For years, she'd built walls between herself and her family. They had mistaken humility for failure. They had judged without knowing. Tomorrow, she thought, they would learn the truth, and they would learn it at the Grandview estate. The same place they once said was too expensive for people like us. Victoria smiled faintly. The irony was perfect. Tomorrow, the balance would shift. The next morning, Victoria was up before sunrise. Her decision was already made. She sat at her desk with a cup of black coffee, reviewing the Grandview estate's files. Every invoice, every contractor, every signature led back to her. She owned not only the estate, but most of the companies handling the wedding, the catering service, the floral designer, the transportation provider, even the luxury hotel where guests would stay. At exactly 9 a.m., she called Sandra Walsh, the wedding planner. "Sandra, this is Victoria Martinez. Miss Martinez, thank goodness. Did you make a decision about the loan?" "I did, but a loan won't be necessary." "I don't understand," Sandra said cautiously. "Tell me something, Sandra. Who owns the Grandview estate?" There was a pause. "It's owned by an investment company, I believe. Martinez Holdings, if I'm not mistaken." "That's right. Martinez Holdings. And I own Martinez Holdings." Sandra went silent. "I'm not loaning my sister money," Victoria continued. "I'm giving her the wedding as a gift. No charge. But the contract clearly states, I'm the owner, Sandra. I'm waiving all fees. And one more thing, don't tell my family yet. Just inform them the venue situation has been resolved. Tell them the owner decided to sponsor the wedding for personal reasons. Can you handle that?" "Yes, absolutely." "Good. Make sure everything runs perfectly. The wedding will proceed as planned." When she hung up, Victoria leaned back and smiled for the first time in days. For years, she had hidden behind the image of an average woman. Now, the same family who pitied her would be celebrating in a place she owned outright. This wasn't revenge. It was a lesson. She wanted them to understand what assumptions cost, what judgment without knowledge could destroy. By Thursday, her instructions were in motion. The florist confirmed the deliveries. The catering team finalized the menu. Her management staff prepared the estate for the weekend. Victoria personally reviewed every detail. If her sister's dream wedding was happening, it would be flawless. Saturday morning arrived clear and bright. The harbor shimmered in the distance, and the Grandview estate gleamed like something from a magazine. Victoria arrived early, wearing a simple navy dress. It looked understated but cost more than most cars. She preferred it that way, elegance without spectacle. Inside, staff hurried quietly through the halls, adjusting flowers and polishing silver. Victoria checked with the catering manager and photographers. Every element was ready. At 10 a.m., she walked upstairs and knocked on the bridal suite door. "Come in," Isabella called. Victoria stepped in to find her sister glowing in her wedding gown. Their mother was fixing her veil, and their Aunt Carmen was taking photos on her phone. Bridesmaids were scattered around, adjusting dresses and applying makeup. "Victoria," Isabella turned, beaming. "I can't believe you made it early. Did you hear what happened? The venue owner decided to give us the wedding. Everything. For free." Victoria smiled. "That's amazing. I know, right?" Isabella laughed. "Sandra said the owner wanted to sponsor us. Apparently they do charity work or something. It's unreal." Mom joined the conversation. "Thank goodness it worked out. We were so worried. And honestly, Victoria, this is a relief. You said you'd help, but we weren't sure you had that kind of money anyway." Victoria kept her smile steady. "Glad it worked out for everyone." Downstairs, guests began arriving. The air buzzed with excitement. Sandra entered the bridal suite, looking slightly nervous. "Excuse me, ladies, but the owner has arrived and would like to meet everyone in the main parlor. If you could gather your family, please." Isabella clapped her hands. "This is so exciting. I get to thank them in person." They followed Sandra down the grand staircase. The main parlor gleamed under the light streaming through tall windows. Their father was already there with David and Miguel, looking uncomfortable in their tuxedos. "So where's this generous benefactor?" their father asked. "I want to thank them myself." Sandra hesitated, then glanced at Victoria. "She's already here." Everyone looked around. "I don't see anyone," Mom said. Sandra cleared her throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce the owner of the Grand View Estate and the sponsor of today's wedding, Victoria Martinez." The silence that followed was absolute. Isabella's jaw dropped. "What?" Sandra spoke again, her tone formal. "Victoria Martinez is the owner of Martinez Holdings, which purchased this property 18 months ago. She also owns Prestigious Affairs Catering, Botanical Dreams Floral Design, and several other companies providing services for today's event." Their father's face turned pale. "That's impossible." Victoria took out her phone and opened the property documents. "Dad, remember when Isabella fell in love with this place and you said it was too expensive? I bought it that same week." Mom shook her head. "But you work with computers. You drive that old Honda, you live in that tiny apartment." "I drive a Honda because it's practical. My apartment is a penthouse in a building I own. And yes, I worked with computers. I built a tech company and sold it for $37 million. Then I built a real estate business worth over $200 million. Miguel sat down hard on a nearby chair. $200 million? "Give or take," Victoria said. "It fluctuates with the market." Isabella looked stunned. "But you always said you were just getting by. You never came on trips, never spent money." "Because when someone in this family has money," Victoria said quietly, "everyone else suddenly has emergencies and investment ideas. I wanted to build something without pressure, without being used." Their father found his voice. "You've been lying to us for years." "I've been protecting myself," she said evenly. "And maybe protecting you too. Money destroys families when people stop seeing each other as people and start seeing opportunity instead." Mom's voice was small. "We're family, Victoria. Are we? Because for 5 years, every family dinner has included jokes about how I never made it. You told people I might end up homeless. You mocked me for not settling down. You assumed failure because I didn't flaunt success." Her father looked away. "I thought I was motivating you." "By humiliating me?" she asked. "By turning me into the family joke?" No one spoke. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "We didn't know. We thought you were struggling." "I know," Victoria said. "It was easier to let you think that than to deal with the truth." Sandra cleared her throat. "I'll give you privacy. The ceremony starts in 2 hours." She left quickly, closing the door behind her. The silence returned. David, the groom, looked completely lost. Miguel rubbed his forehead. Their father stared at the floor. "So what happens now?" Miguel asked finally. "Are you going to rub this in our faces forever?" "I'm not holding anything over anyone," Victoria said. This wedding is my gift. Every flower, every plate, every song, you get it all free. Not because I owe you, because I love my sister." Isabella began crying again, stepping forward. "Victoria, this is too much. I can't accept it." "You're not accepting anything," Victoria said. "You're receiving a gift. No strings," Mom whispered. "What do you want from us?" "Respect," Victoria said simply. "No more comments about my life choices. No more assumptions about what I can or can't do. I'm done being the disappointment," her father exhaled slowly. "Then I owe you an apology." "You owe me several," she said, softening. "But not today. Today is about Isabella." For the first time in years, her voice carried authority. She had built her life in silence. Now the silence was gone. The power had shifted. The ceremony began just before noon. The Grandview Estates garden shimmered under the afternoon sun. Rows of white chairs lined the stone path, each decorated with fresh orchids and lilies. The air smelled like flowers and salt from the nearby harbor. Guests whispered in admiration, taking photos of the mansion, the fountains, the floral arches. No one knew the quiet woman seated near the aisle owned everything around them. Victoria sat calmly, watching. Her family's earlier shock had faded into uneasy silence. Her father avoided her eyes. Her mother kept glancing her way, as if trying to reconcile two versions of the same person. Isabella smiled brightly for the guests, pretending everything was normal, but her hands trembled when she held her bouquet. The music began. The crowd stood as Isabella walked down the aisle, radiant and composed. Victoria watched her sister's face, seeing traces of the same innocence she had when she'd dreamed about this place years ago. When Isabella reached the altar, she caught Victoria's eye. For a second, the mask fell. Gratitude replaced pride. A small nod passed between them. No words, just understanding. The ceremony continued flawlessly. The vows were sincere. The officiant spoke about love and unity. Guests laughed and wiped tears. Cameras flashed. The moment felt perfect, but under the surface, the tension was still there, quiet and heavy. After the ceremony, as everyone moved toward the reception hall, Victoria stepped aside. She watched the crowd admire the chandeliers and crystal table settings. Every design detail had her signature, though no one would know. Miguel approached her, holding a glass of champagne. "So, you're really the boss of all this?" "Yes." He took a sip. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything," she replied. "Just enjoy the day." He looked at her carefully. "You could have told us, you know. We might have treated you differently." "That's exactly why I didn't tell you," she said. Miguel nodded slowly. "Fair point." Their father approached next. His usual confidence was gone. He looked older, smaller somehow. "Victoria, can we talk privately?" They walked to the balcony overlooking the garden. For a while he said nothing, just stared at the view. "When you were a kid," he began, "I used to think you'd never survive in the real world. You were quiet. You didn't care about fitting in. I thought you lacked drive. I was wrong." Victoria folded her arms. "You weren't just wrong. You were cruel." He nodded, eyes still on the view. "I know. I thought I was teaching you strength. I ended up teaching you silence." For a long moment, they both stood quietly. Then he turned toward her. "I'm proud of you. I don't know if that means anything coming from me, but I am." "It means something," she said, her voice flat but calm. "But it doesn't erase the past." He nodded again. "Fair enough." Back inside, the reception was in full motion. Music played. Guests danced. Laughter filled the hall. Isabella and David moved gracefully across the floor, glowing in the light of the chandeliers. Victoria stayed near the edge of the crowd, sipping her drink, watching it all unfold. People who'd ignored her at past family gatherings now approached with sudden interest. One aunt smiled too brightly. "Victoria, dear, you never told us you were such a successful woman." "I didn't think it was relevant," she replied coolly. Another cousin asked about investments, pretending it was casual conversation. Victoria answered briefly, then excused herself. She wasn't here to brag. She was here to watch the truth settle in. At dinner, Isabella stood to make a toast. Her voice trembled slightly. "I want to thank everyone for being here," she began. "And I want to especially thank the person who made today possible. Not just for paying for it, but for believing in me when no one else did." Guests turned toward Victoria. "Victoria," Isabella said, looking directly at her. "I spent years thinking you had no ambition. I thought you were the quiet sister who stayed in the background. I was wrong. You built an empire without needing applause. You worked while we judged. You succeeded while we underestimated you. You're the strongest person I know, and I'm proud to call you my sister." Applause filled the room. Victoria raised her glass slightly. "To Isabella and David," she said simply. The music resumed. The atmosphere softened. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Victoria slipped outside. The gardens glowed under string lights, the water beyond calm and reflective. She walked alone to the far end of the terrace, where she could hear the faint echo of laughter from inside. Her mother found her there. "Everyone's talking about you," she said gently. "I noticed." Her mother sighed. "I don't know what hurts more, realizing how little we knew about you or realizing how much we judged you." "You didn't just judge," Victoria said quietly. "You doubted me, constantly." "I know," her mother said. "And I'm sorry. We were wrong." Victoria didn't respond immediately. The air was cool, and she could hear waves crashing against the rocks below. "When you were little," her mother continued, "you used to say you wanted to own buildings. Your father laughed and said, 'That's not what girls do.' I remember you stopped talking about it after that." Victoria turned to face her. "I didn't stop dreaming. I just stopped telling people." Her mother nodded slowly, tears forming. "You became everything we said you couldn't." "I became what I had to," Victoria said. They stood in silence, the sound of the reception faint in the background. Finally, her mother took her hand. "Will you come home more often?" "I'll try," Victoria said. "But it depends on whether home feels like a place I belong." Her mother squeezed her hand. "Then we'll make it that place again." Back inside, the celebration carried on. Isabella danced barefoot, laughing freely. Miguel told stories. Even their father smiled, though his eyes stayed thoughtful. As the night deepened, Victoria allowed herself to relax. The walls she'd built for years were still there, but now they had cracks. The truth was out. There was nothing left to hide. For once, she didn't feel the need to control everything. She had made her point. Near midnight, Isabella found her again. "You know," she said, "I think Dad finally realizes what you've done with your life." "Good," Victoria said, "and I think Mom's going to brag about you for the rest of her life." Victoria smirked. "Let her. She's earned it." Isabella hugged her tightly. "Thank you. For this wedding." "For everything," Victoria hugged back. "You deserved it. You always did." They stood there quietly, sisters again, without envy or pride between them. When the night ended and guests began leaving, Victoria stayed behind. She walked through the empty ballroom, the scent of flowers still heavy in the air. The silence felt peaceful. She touched one of the marble pillars and thought about how far she'd come, from being dismissed to being undeniable. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about freedom. For the first time in her life, she felt it completely. The morning after the wedding was quiet. The Grand View estate stood still under the gray dawn. Empty wine glasses rested on tables, petals scattered across the floor, chairs slightly out of place. The celebration was over, and so was the illusion that had defined Victoria's life for years. Victoria walked through the estate alone. The air smelled of rain and roses. She passed through the ballroom, then the terrace, then the gardens where her sister had stood hours before, promising love and forever. It all looked different now, peaceful but final. Her phone buzzed. A message from Isabella. "Breakfast at Mom's?" "Just family." "Please come," she hesitated. Then she typed back, "On my way." An hour later, she parked outside her parents' house. It was the same modest home she'd grown up in, the same peeling paint on the porch, the same sound of wind through the old oak tree. For years, she'd avoided this place. Now, walking through the front door felt strange. Inside, the smell of coffee and toast filled the kitchen. Isabella was already there, sitting at the table in jeans and a sweatshirt, her makeup gone, her face glowing with calm joy. Their parents sat across from her, both quiet. When Victoria entered, they all looked up. Her mother smiled first. "Good morning, sweetheart." "Come sit." Victoria took a seat. No one spoke for a moment. The silence felt different this time. Not heavy, not cold. Just new. Her father cleared his throat. "We've been talking," he said slowly. "About yesterday. About you." Victoria nodded. "I guessed that." "You've done something remarkable," he said. "I didn't raise you to believe you could, and that's my failure. I spent years pushing you into a box because I was afraid. I didn't understand ambition that didn't look like mine." He took a breath. "You deserved better." For once, Victoria didn't feel angry. She only said, "Thank you." Her mother reached across the table and touched her hand. "We were wrong about so many things. We used to think success was about appearance, about who looked happiest, who had the biggest house. But you built everything quietly. You didn't need anyone's approval." Victoria looked at her sister. "You okay?" Isabella smiled softly. "Better than okay. Yesterday changed everything. I saw who you really are. I spent years feeling like the successful one. Turns out I was just loud." Victoria smiled faintly. "You've always had charm. I just had patience." They all laughed a little, the tension easing further. Her father leaned back. "So what happens now? Are you moving closer? Retiring? Buying a country?" Victoria shook her head. "None of that. I'm not done building yet, but I think I'll stop hiding." Her mother nodded. "People will want things from you now." "They always do," Victoria said. "But this time I'll decide who gets close." After breakfast, she helped her mother clean the table. Simple gestures felt unfamiliar. For years, she'd been distant, watching her family from the edges of life. Now, standing in that small kitchen, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. As she was leaving, Isabella followed her to the car. "You know," she said, "I told David last night that my sister is the woman I want to become." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "You mean quiet, secretive, and impossible to read?" Isabella laughed. "No. Independent. You didn't wait for anyone's approval. You made your own rules." "That's power," Victoria smiled. "Then promise me something. Use your voice. Don't shrink for anyone, not even for family." "I promise," Isabella said. They hugged again, longer this time. That afternoon, Victoria returned to her office. Her assistant was waiting with updates. "Congratulations, Ms. Martinez. The event was trending all night. Everyone's talking about how perfect it was." "Good," she said. "Let's review this week's deals." The assistant handed her a folder. 2 offers came in for the estate, by the way. Both above market value. Victoria looked at the numbers, then set the papers down. "I'm not selling. That property stays." "Yes, ma'am." When the assistant left, Victoria stood by the window. The city stretched before her, alive with movement. For years, she'd measured success by how much she could achieve without being seen. Now she realized success also meant being unafraid of visibility. Her story wasn't about wealth. It was about control. Control over her time, her decisions, her boundaries. In the following weeks, the news about her company spread through business circles. Investors she had once turned down now sought meetings. Journalists called her the invisible mogul. Her inbox filled with requests for interviews, collaborations, and speaking engagements. She declined most of them. Public attention had never been her goal. But one invitation caught her eye, a mentorship program for young women in business. She accepted that one. The event was small. 20 women gathered in a quiet conference room overlooking the harbor. When it was Victoria's turn to speak, she kept her words simple. "I built my first company when I was 25, she said. "Everyone around me thought I was wasting time. They told me to get a real job. I ignored them. I sold that company 3 years later for $37 million. Then I started buying properties, quietly, consistently, with no one to impress. Success isn't loud. It's disciplined. It's patient. And it's yours if you stop needing people to see it. The room was silent. Then someone asked, "What's the hardest part of success?" "Not the work," Victoria said. "It's the loneliness. People love you when you're struggling. They fear you when you succeed. So build your strength from within, not from applause." When the session ended, several women stayed behind to thank her. One said softly, "Your story gave me hope." That night, as Victoria drove home, she thought about that word, hope. She had spent most of her life proving something to herself, not realizing that her silence might one day help others find courage. Back at her penthouse, she walked onto the terrace. The city lights reflected off the glass towers, and far in the distance, she could see the faint outline of the Grandview estate. The place that had once represented rejection now symbolized transformation. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat down. Her phone buzzed again. A text from her father, "Dinner next Sunday, my treat." No business talk, just family. She smiled and typed back, "I'll be there." For years, she had wanted recognition. Now, she wanted connection. The walls she built had protected her, but they had also isolated her. Maybe it was time to open the gates, just enough to let love in without losing herself. As the night deepened, she looked at the skyline and whispered to herself, "They finally see me." But she knew the truth. The goal was never to be seen. The goal was to become unshakable, with or without their approval. She had done that. And now, the woman who once hid behind silence had finally stepped into her own light, calm, grounded, and free.